Alhamdulillah, in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most gracious, the most merciful. Peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You look strong when people see you. But some nights, when everything is finally quiet, you feel how tired you really are. The room is dark. Your phone isn't buzzing. And you're lying there awake holding thoughts you don't share with anyone. This reminder isn't for a breakdown. It's for the moment you keep pushing away. The moment you tell yourself, I'm fine, even though something inside you feels heavy. You still show up. You still do what's expected. You still smile when needed. And maybe that smile isn't fake, but it doesn't tell the full story. Because there is a kind of strength that looks steady on the outside and feels exhausting on the inside. Some pain doesn't demand attention. It stays unseen, unspoken. Not because it's small, but because you don't know how to place it into words. And in those quiet spaces when you're alone with your thoughts, you might wonder if anyone would understand even if you tried to explain. But before anyone else notices, Allah already knows. He sees what your heart carries without saying. He hears the dua that never leaves your chest. Not as judgment, as nearness. If you've ever felt tired of being the one who holds it together, if you've ever felt surrounded yet strangely alone, if you've ever thought, I don't know what's wrong, I just know I'm tired. That feeling you recognized just now, that pause in your chest, that's not random. This reminder isn't here to fix you. It's not here to rush you. It's here to sit with you gently and remind you that you're not carrying this by yourself. You don't need answers yet. You don't need perfect faith. You don't need to explain everything. Just stay here for a moment. Let your guard soften. Let your heart breathe. Before you label this as weakness, listen carefully. This part matters. There is a kind of pain that doesn't show itself easily, not because it isn't real, but because you've learned how to live with it quietly. There is a kind of pain people rarely speak about, not because it isn't deep, but because it doesn't feel explainable. It's not always sadness. Not always anxiety. Sometimes it's just a constant weight you've learned to live with. You hide it because you don't want to be misunderstood. You hide it because you've seen what happens when people open up and are told, just be grateful or others have it worse. So you learn to stay quiet. Over time, silence starts to feel safer than honesty. You become careful with your words. You shorten your answers. You smile before anyone can ask a second question. Not because you're dishonest, but because explaining how you really feel takes more energy than you have. And slowly, pretending becomes exhausting. There's a tiredness that comes from acting, all the time. From holding yourself together when you don't feel held. From being the one people rely on while no one notices how heavy your own heart feels. You tell yourself, it's not that bad. I should be able to handle this. I don't want to burden anyone. So you push through day after day. But inside, something feels unseen. What makes it harder is the fear. The fear that if you did speak, you wouldn't be taken seriously. That your pain would be minimized. That you would be seen as weak for feeling this way. So you stay quiet, unspoken, carrying more than you let on. And maybe you've reached a point where even you don't fully know how to describe what's wrong anymore. You just know you're tired. But here is something gentle and important to remember. What you don't say out loud is not hidden from Allah. Even when your lips stay silent, your heart is not invisible. Even when your struggle has no words, it still has meaning. Allah knows what settles quietly inside the chest. He knows the thoughts you dismiss, the feelings you downplay, The whispers you ignore because you think they're too small to matter. Your silence does not make your pain insignificant, and it does not make you unseen. If any part of this feels familiar, if you're listening and thinking, this is exactly what I do, then know this: you are not strange for feeling this way. You are not weak for carrying it quietly. And you are not alone, even in the parts of your struggle no one else hears. Sometimes the pain you don't talk about is the very pain Allah is already aware of. At some point, being the strong one stops feeling empowering and starts feeling isolating. People come to you because you always manage, because you don't complain, because you seem steady no matter what's happening. And without realizing it, you become the person who carries everything quietly. You tell yourself that this is patience, that staying silent means you're being strong, that if you just endure a little more, it will pass. But strength, when carried alone for too long, turns into loneliness. You begin to feel like there's no space for your own weakness, like you're not allowed to pause, not allowed to need anything. So you keep going even when you're drained. This is where many hearts get confused. They mistake silence for sabr. They confuse emotional neglect with spiritual discipline. But sabr was never meant to erase your feelings. Sabr is not pretending you're fine when you're not. It is not swallowing pain until it hardens your heart. And it is not ignoring your own limits in the name of faith. Islam never taught us to suffer in isolation. The Prophet ﷺ himself was not emotionally distant. He felt deeply. He grieved openly. He cried when he lost those he loved. Tears did not weaken his iman. They did not cancel his patience. They were a sign of a living, connected heart. There were moments when his sadness was visible, moments when his voice softened, moments when vulnerability was not hidden but human. And this matters because it teaches us something essential. Expressing pain does not mean you lack faith. Feeling tired does not mean you failed a test. Sometimes what you call being strong is actually you being alone for too long. You've been holding yourself together so well that no one thinks to ask if you need support. And maybe you've convinced yourself that you shouldn't need it either. But the heart was not created to carry everything by itself. Allah did not design sabr to be self-destruction. He did not ask you to abandon your own needs in order to prove devotion. Real patience has space for honesty. Real strength allows moments of softness. And real faith does not require you to disappear emotionally. If this feels personal, if you're realizing how long you've been carrying things alone, then let this settle gently. You don't lose your strength by admitting you're tired. You don't lose your iman by letting yourself feel. And you don't become less patient by allowing your heart to be human. Sometimes the loneliest place to be is behind the label of the strong one. There are moments when the world feels far away, when the house is quiet, when the night stretches longer than it should. And it's there in that stillness where the heart finally speaks, not out loud, not clearly, but honestly. Some du'as are not formed with words. They stay trapped in the chest, heavy, unfinished. They sound like sighs, like silence, like tears that fall without warning. You may not even realize you're making dua, but Allah does. Because divine closeness does not depend on how loud you ask. It depends on how real your heart is. There are tears that never reach anyone else's attention. Tears you wipe quickly. Tears you cry only when no one is watching. You don't post them. You don't explain them. You don't even fully understand them. But Allah sees everyone. He is not distant from the quiet heart. He is not unaware of the one who breaks softly. When your pain feels too small to explain, too confusing to describe, too private to share, it is still known. Allah is near in the moments when you feel most alone, near when your chest feels tight, near when your thoughts feel heavy, near when your strength runs low. And nearness here is not symbolic, it is real. The Quran reminds us gently that Allah responds when a servant calls upon Him, even when that call is whispered, even when it's messy, even when it comes with tears instead of sentences. You may feel like no one hears you, but you are not speaking into emptiness. Your heart is not crying into a void. Every quiet breakdown is witnessed. Every silent plea is recorded. Every tear is valued. And slowly, without you even noticing, something shifts. Loneliness softens. Because when you realize that Allah has been close the entire time, the silence no longer feels empty. It feels held. You're not alone in the night. You're not forgotten in the quiet. And your pain is not passing unnoticed. Even when your strength fades, even when your voice disappears, Allah remains near, listening to the call your heart makes when words fall short. After some time, a quiet question begins to surface. You may never say it out loud, but it settles gently and painfully in the heart. If Allah sees this, why is it still here? You've made dua, not always with long words, sometimes only with tears, sometimes with silence mixed with hope. And yet, the heaviness hasn't lifted. This is where many hearts begin to feel confused. Not because faith disappears, but because waiting becomes exhausting. You start replaying your prayers in your mind, wondering if you asked the wrong way, if your iman wasn't strong enough, if maybe this pain is something you're meant to live with. And then another struggle quietly joins the first one: comparison. You see others moving forward, finding relief, smiling more easily than you can. You tell yourself not to compare, but the thought still slips in. Why does it seem easier for them? Feeling this way does not mean your heart is weak. It means your heart is tired. Here is something gentle but important to remember. Delay does not mean rejection. In Islam, unanswered does not mean unheard. Silence does not mean absence. The Prophet ﷺ taught that dua is answered in different ways. Sometimes Allah gives exactly what is asked for. Sometimes He removes a harm we never noticed. And sometimes He saves the answer for a time we do not yet understand. Not because He withholds mercy, but because He sees the full picture. Our hearts want relief quickly. We want clarity now. We want pain to make sense immediately. But Allah's timing is not shaped by urgency. It is shaped by wisdom. Sometimes the pain stays, not to punish you, but to protect you. Not to break you, but to prepare you. What feels like being forgotten may actually be Allah holding something back until your heart is ready to receive it. It's okay if this is hard to accept. It's okay if patience feels heavy some days. Faith does not require constant understanding. It only asks you not to give up. If you're listening and thinking, I've been asking for so long, remember this: your dua was heard, your tears were counted, and your waiting is not empty. Even when relief feels delayed, Allah's still responding, just in a way your heart will one day recognize as mercy. Not every test announces itself. Some tests arrive loudly, visible to everyone, and some arrive quietly, settling deep inside the heart. These are the tests few people notice. The ones where nothing dramatic happens on the outside, but everything feels heavy on the inside. You wake up, you function, you fulfill your responsibilities, and no one sees the effort it takes just to keep going. This is the quiet test. The internal battle, the one fought in thoughts, emotions, and endurance. The one that doesn't earn sympathy because it isn't obvious. And yet, these are often the tests that shape the heart the most. Because when pain is visible, support comes easily. But when pain is hidden, something deeper happens. You begin turning inward, reflecting more, speaking to Allah in ways you didn't before, not always with confidence, sometimes with confusion, sometimes with exhaustion, but still, you turn to Him. This is how growth happens invisibly. Just as roots grow beneath the soil before a tree appears strong, the heart strengthens in unseen ways before relief arrives. The struggle you carry quietly is not wasted. In Islam, hidden hardship holds a special weight because patience in silence is not ignored, it is known. Allah is gentle with His servants, and His gentleness often appears in forms we don't immediately recognize. Sometimes He allows the test to remain, so the heart softens instead of hardens. So reliance grows deeper, so the connection becomes more sincere. Pain, when carried with awareness of Allah, becomes elevation. Not because pain itself is good, but because of what it produces inside you. There are rewards that only come from struggles no one applauds, from tears no one sees, from endurance that goes unnoticed. And Allah does not overlook any of it. He knows how hard it is to stay hopeful quietly. He knows how much effort it takes to keep trusting when answers feel delayed. He knows how much strength it requires to keep turning back to Him. What you may see as weakness, Allah sees as perseverance. What feels like stagnation, He sees as preparation. And what feels like distance may actually be closeness forming in a way only hardship can create. If you are going through a test that no one understands, one that feels invisible and isolating, remember this: the quiet tests often shape the strongest hearts, and the struggles hidden from people are never hidden from Allah. Sometimes the most powerful growth happens in places no one else can see, except the one who is gentle with you, even in the pain. Somewhere along the way, many hearts learn a quiet rule: I should be able to handle this on my own. So you stop reaching out. You stop asking. You convince yourself that needing help means you failed somehow. And slowly, isolation begins to feel like responsibility. But this was never the way faith was meant to be lived. Islam does not ask you to carry your struggles alone. It does not ask you to be silent until you break. And it does not expect you to be self-sufficient with your pain. Asking for help is not a weakness. It is honesty, especially when that asking begins with Allah. You are allowed to speak openly to Him, not with polished words, not with perfect structure, but with truth. You can say, I'm tired. You can say, I don't know what to do. You can say, I need you. The Prophet ﷺ himself turned to Allah openly. He asked, he pleaded, he sought strength and relief without hiding his need. And he taught his companions to do the same, to ask sincerely, to ask consistently, to ask with trust, not embarrassment. There was no shame in neediness before Allah. There was only closeness, and sometimes help comes not only through dua, but through people Allah places in your path. Seeking support does not mean you lack tawakkul. It means you understand that Allah works through means. It means you allow yourself to be human. You are not burdening others by being honest. You are not failing a test by reaching out. You are not less faithful for needing support. Silence may feel safer, but connection is what heals. And this includes being emotionally honest in dua. You don't need to downplay your pain. You don't need to compare it to others. You don't need to justify why it hurts. Allah already knows. What He invites you to do is this: bring it to Him anyway. Bring the confusion, bring the fear, bring the exhaustion. Because asking is not a sign that you are weak. It is a sign that you know where strength truly comes from. If you've been telling yourself you must handle everything alone, let this be a gentle reminder. You were never meant to. You are allowed to ask. You are allowed to lean. And you are allowed to be supported by Allah first, and then by the help He sends in ways you may not expect. Not all worship is loud. Some of the most sincere moments with Allah happen in silence. When the heart is heavy and words feel difficult to form, there is a way pain can change shape. It doesn't disappear immediately, but it begins to move from something you carry alone into something you place before Allah. This is when pain becomes dua. Not the kind written in books, not the kind recited perfectly, but the kind whispered from a tired heart. Late at night, when sleep doesn't come easily, you turn slightly toward Allah. Maybe without lifting your hands, maybe without even realizing you're asking. Your thoughts slow, your chest tightens, and in that quiet, your heart speaks. Ya Allah, you know. Sometimes that is all you can say, and sometimes that is enough. These private moments, unseen by anyone else, carry a closeness that cannot be explained. No audience, no performance, just honesty. In Islam, pain does not block connection with Allah. It often deepens it. Every sigh becomes remembrance. Every tear becomes a form of calling. Every moment of weakness becomes a doorway. This is why silent pain does not have to push you away from Allah. It can pull you closer if you let it. You don't need to wait until you feel strong again to make dua. You don't need to be calm. You don't need to have clarity. You come as you are. Short whispers throughout the day. Quiet conversations in the night. Small moments where you acknowledge Allah's presence. These are not insignificant. They are bridges. And slowly, without you forcing anything, something changes. The pain still exists, but it no longer feels empty. It feels shared because you've stopped carrying it by yourself. When pain turns into dua, it stops being a wall between you and Allah. It becomes a path, a private one, a sincere one, a deeply personal one. If you are carrying something heavy right now, try this gently. Don't push the pain away. Don't explain it. Just place it before Allah, even silently. Because sometimes The dua that changes everything is the one whispered, when the heart has no strength left for words. If you've stayed until this point, take a slow breath, not to analyze anything, not to fix anything, just to notice where your heart is right now. Maybe it feels a little lighter. Maybe it feels the same but less alone. Sometimes reminders don't arrive to change our situation. They arrive to change how alone we feel inside it. Nothing you're experiencing makes you strange. Nothing you're carrying disqualifies you from Allah's care. And nothing about your quiet struggle has gone unnoticed. You don't need to measure your pain. You don't need to compare it. You don't need to justify why it's heavy. What you feel is what you feel. And Allah meets you exactly there. If your heart has been tired, it doesn't mean it's weak. If your dua has been quiet, it doesn't mean it's empty. If your journey feels slow, it doesn't mean you're failing. Sometimes the most meaningful changes happen gently, without announcements, without clear milestones. Just a soft return to hope. Let this reminder be that not a demand, not a lecture, but a moment of reassurance. You are seen, you are heard, and you are not walking this path by yourself. Whatever you're carrying today, you don't have to drop it all at once. Just remember this: Allah is still with you, closer than you feel, more aware than you realize. And that alone is reason enough to keep going. Ya Allah, for every heart listening quietly right now, every heart carrying pain without words, we turn to you. You know what we hide. You know what exhausts us. You know the tears that fall when no one is watching. Ya Allah, be gentle with those who feel tired inside, with those who keep going even when they feel empty, with those who are strong for everyone else but feel weak alone. Ya Allah, ease what feels heavy, not always by removing it, but by giving hearts strength, patience, and light. Answer the du'as that were whispered, the ones that never made it past the chest, the ones mixed with confusion and hope. Ya Allah, replace loneliness with your nearness. Replace exhaustion with calm. Replace fear with trust, slowly, gently. For those who feel unseen, remind them they are known. For those who feel forgotten, remind them they are remembered. For those who feel broken, remind them they are held. Ya Allah, give relief to tired hearts in the way you know is best. And if relief must wait, give patience that does not harden the soul. Keep us close to you, especially in moments when we feel far